It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening and welcome to the Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee doing it again. Good evening, sir, Mr. McKee.
Good evening. You like this weather?
Love it.
Love it?
That's my kind of weather.
Well, I don't know. You know, the past week I think that we've had summer, spring, fall, and winter all within the same week. I really believe that.
Wow, I can't argue with that. It's been interesting, been cool. Sports. Any sports going on?
Man, it was football all over, I guess. I think we got that, what is it called, United Football League or World Football League comes back next month.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Old JMRB.
JMRB back in Birmingham.
Yeah. And so we'll be Matt Corral there. And so we'll see what we got to do with football. But a lot of basketball, baseball started on the college level. So, we'll be talking about probably a lot of the college stuff here in a few minutes with our special guest.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. I saw a little article. I didn't actually. My son shared this with me. And interesting sources on Yahoo Sports, SEC, the Big Ten building momentum to further expand the college football playoff from 14 to 16 teams. It seems like the SEC and the Big Ten have weaseled themselves out of a way where they have some final say over some things. Are you familiar with that?
I am, but still, we talked a couple weeks ago. We had so many mismatches that first weekend, if you really remember.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 and 12 and 6 and 11 and all that, really. We have discussed, man, why don't you just keep it at 4,
Yeah.
But I would be proposed to, have like I think there's 5 conferences, have 5 conferences and have three wild cards out of the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. Have the champs from each conference. Got to be a champ from each conference. All 5 of those, and then you pick the 3 best wild card based on strength of schedule, or what they go by, and just have an 18 playoff. And everybody play the first weekend. 1 through 8 plays.
Mm-hmm.
1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, just down the line like that, and it'll be a 3-week process, and that's just what I believe. I guess they're doing it for money, but I don't see the point in it. I think it's going to take away a lot from these, the old traditional bowl games and things. But I think the traditional bowl games are going by the wayside anyway.
Yeah. Why would that be that they're gone? Do you think?
Well,
people don't care anymore.
Well, it's not such a big deal anymore to maybe go to some of these bowls. I know that they're keeping the peach, the orange, the sugar, the cotton, and the rolls are in the cycle of playoff. That's where they play them. And I just I think that I think playing on a college campus is neat.
I like that a lot too.
I mean, you just think about just places that you hadn't been. I mean, so somebody go to Michigan or somebody go to Ohio State or Penn State, and we don't get to see those teams very much. But those are such unique venues. They have such a rich tradition in football. Mm-hmm. And teams from north coming south and going to an LSU or an Alabama, Georgia, and experiencing, experiencing those venues.
It's a big old world out there, Dale.
I mean, it is,
Yeah.
And I really believe, that one day we're going to have maybe 5 really powerful conferences with 12 teams in each conference and just go from there. I saw the other day that the basketball has grown from 32 when I was growing up till, they called it the 64 for a while. Now it's like 68 because they have a little couple, or 66, they have a couple of wild card teams come in. And so I saw the other day they're thinking about going to 128.
Huh.
And I'm thinking, my goodness. That's the only thing the NCAA probably does right is their basketball. So let's don't mess it up, NCAA.
I read an article one time. I don't think the SEC really has as much power over other sports as really the only really thing that they put on is the basketball tournament, is it not?
What now? Basketball?
Yeah, NCAA.
Yeah.
That's it, really.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, bowls and everybody else controls the rest of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just world of sports is changing, and people fussing about the All-Star game in the NBA, which I didn't watch, and spring football games are going away. Ole Miss didn't really have one last year. I mean, they had like a flag football.
I
game.
like that too.
And Nebraska said, "Hey, we're not going to do a spring," but their philosophy was, "Hey, I don't want to put film on these kids so other people can steal my players."
Exactly.
So Kiffin's kind of ahead at the times when some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So what Saints got him a coach.
Oh yeah, what they get? A coach?
Yeah, they got an offensive coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh man.
So we'll see how that works out for him.
Does he have a name?
Moore.
Moore?
Kellen Moore.
Wow.
He was a quarterback at, I think, Utah State.
I've heard of that guy.
He is the winningest quarterback in college football. When he played, he was 40-2 as a quarterback.
That's pretty good.
That ain't bad. Is
That
it?
ain't bad at all. I tell you what, speaking of not bad, I bet you got a guess for us tonight that ain't so bad either. Uh-oh.
Yes, we're very honored tonight to have another Mississippi Hall of Famer with us,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rick Cleveland. And Rick is in the Mississippi Hall of Fame as a sports writer.
Man, that's outstanding.
So, I've had a long time relation with him going back to the 1973. So,
wow.
So
Been a minute.
So,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Dale, let's take a break. I'm looking forward to hearing what all Rick's got to say. So let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be back with tonight's guest, Rick Cleveland, right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
welcome to the show, Rick Cleveland. Rick, glad to have you today on the show. We've kind of gone over a few things in our introduction about yourself, but why don't you tell the folks, so they may not know the whole story, but how'd you get into sports writing and when did you start?
Well, Bill, my daddy was the sports editor of the Hattiesburg American when I was born 100 years ago. And he, I grew up with kind of going with him to games, and then he left the newspaper business to become the sports information director at Southern Miss. So a lot of times, after games on Saturday night, all the sports writers from all over the state who came in to cover the games would come over to our house, to talk about what they wrote, and talk about the games, and seemed like they were always laughing and having fun. And it just seemed like to me it might be a good way to make a living. And then when I was about 12 years old, they started throwing curveballs, and I knew I wasn't going to make the major leagues, so decided I'd write about it.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of us get into sports writing. We couldn't hit the curveball, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so take us from there. Where was your first full-time opportunity to get into sports writing? Was it in the Hattiesburg area?
Yeah, well, I started at the Hattiesburg American covering games for them when I was 13 years old. I had to go take the typing. I didn't know how to type, and so that was the one thing I couldn't do. And I took at age 13, and I was about, 4'11". I took a typing class at Southern, and learned how to type, and then started writing stories for the Hattiesburg American. And the day I graduated from high school, I took a full-time job there, and then I worked through my college years at the Hattiesburg American. worked with some wonderful people, and it was a good place to start out. I learned a lot. Been in Mississippi my whole life except for 1 year. I left Hattiesburg and went to Monroe, Louisiana for a year, and then I came back to Declare and Ledger in 1979. I've been here ever since.
I look back on those days, and you've probably seen the change in the way the new newspaper business is. We've gone from daily papers to 2 or 3 day paper, and a lot of online papers now. And that it just seemed like it was so fun on Saturday morning to pick up a Hattiesburg American or a Laurel paper or the Clarion Ledger and open it up and see how all the different high schools did and read stories about them. And I just kind of miss those days. Do you still miss the days of when we kind of started out there in the 70s?
Oh, yeah. I mean, terribly. I mean, I'm a newspaper guy. That was my life. I miss it, and I'm not sure that we're better for it as a society. I think the community newspaper was a really important part of American life, of democracy. I mean, I don't want to overstate things, but I just think newspapers are important. I hate what's happened, but I've been a part of it. I've seen it at every stage, from the glory years to what it has become. I mean, the news is still out there. It's just not delivered in the same way. And you really gotta have a sieve. You gotta filter out what's not news now from the internet.
Yeah, that's the key. Back in the day, people would call with tips, and we would have to run the tips down. It wasn't like you just put it in the paper, and so and nowadays they'll post something and I'll look at it about 2 or 3 times. Say, I don't know if this is true or not. Even sport, even sports things. It's just and I'm getting old and I can't figure some of this stuff out.
Well, here's the thing: if I was 13 years old again, I don't think I would go into what's left of the business. For sure, I'd do something else, and I hate that, but that's just kind of the way I feel about it.
Oh yeah, it was so good, and you probably remember the days too when you had all the small schools before some of the consolidation around the area, and of course, I look back and when I was growing up, Oak Grove was one of the smallest schools around, and now it's one of the biggest schools around. So it's just
it's amazing. That was that little country school out west of Hattiesburg. I don't think the whole time I was working at the Hattiesburg American, I even went out there to cover a game. It was so such a small school. There weren't many readers out there. I cut my teeth covering games like Purvis and Collins and Kettle and Northeast Jones, and just the old DeSoto and Apache conferences that are long since gone. And that was great. That was all wonderful stuff. Jack Bailey at Collins, Jack Kraft at Purvis. We had great coaches all around us, and it was fun. It was a fun time to cover high school sports in South Mississippi.
Oh, it most definitely was, and I really miss those days like you. I think the playoffs are kind of good to get a state championship, and I have nothing. I don't get a vote, but it just seems like they watered down the playoff system to a certain extent. I know now if you really look at, I think some of these classes only have like what is it, Marshall? 24 teams in a whole class. You know, like 12 in
That's
the
crazy.
South, 12 in the North, and 24 teams playing for a state championship. You know, and I'm just
It's
thinking,
almost like the private school leagues are.
yeah,
But you know where it's still, Dale, where it's still kind of the way it used to be is up in northeast Mississippi, hill country.
yeah. Oh,
They've kind of shunned consolidation, and every little town still has its team. And to be honest with you, it's more because of basketball than football.
yeah.
Those little towns don't want to give up their basketball teams.
No, I think that's always been the hotbed for basketball. I remember one of the first time I was exposed to that was in the state tournament one year. I went up there to see. I was covering Northeast Jones girl basketball team. They were playing for the state championship that year, and got up there. And Gulfport was playing a little old team I really didn't know much about called New Albany. And I got out there, and I saw a guy named John Stroud, you know, and I'm thinking, these guys are so fundamentally south. Of course, Gulfport, you know, that was that great team that they had with the, I can't remember all those boys. I think a lot of them went to Mississippi State, the Jenkins boy and White boy.
Ray White.
Yeah, Ray White. I mean, they had that. I mean, that team was, oh my goodness, that team was gifted. But getting to basketball, because it just seems like you just see things. I remember the guy from Holly Bluff that time came up to Jackson, scored about 50. I can't remember his name right now. Nobody knew who he was. He scored 50 at the state tournament, you know, and seeing Rod Barnes playing in a state tournament years later, talking to him as a coach, you know, at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something about that.
That was one of the most interesting stories I've ever covered, because Ed Murphy was the coach at Delta State when Rod Barnes was playing. And Ed didn't think enough of him to recruit him to Delta State. And then he inherited him when he took the job at Ole Miss, and Rod became all SEC.
Yeah.
Coached him up.
Yeah.
Coached him up, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, well, you know, basketball, you know, was as popular back in that day as it seemed like as football is now. It seems like Mississippi's slowly turning toward a football school state. Do you in the high school ranks? Do you consider that or what?
Well, I think football has always been. I mean, Mississippi has always been a football state. You could make the case, really, we're a baseball state now. Our baseball is as good as anywhere. But I think at heart, we've always been a football state, and Friday night's always been, you know, you got high school football on Friday night and church on Sunday.
Yeah, that's basically it.
And in a lot of little towns, you got deer hunting on Saturday, and not so much college football. So anyway, it's I still think we're more a football state than anything, except up in northeast Mississippi and hill country, and that's basketball for sure.
Yes, it is. I just know that we've been, you know, I just remember the 80s when when MK ended up loading up on all that local talent and took them down to Hattiesburg, and you know, the Gerardo Hintons of the world, and the Randolph
Clarence
Keys,
Weatherspoon.
Clarence. You know, I mean, he was getting all these and you know, players from the local area to play for him, and he had kids.
You know, Dale, he stole that model from Dave Whitney. Whitney was the guy that was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Alcorn was ripping and rolling back in the 70s.
Yeah.
With Davey Whitney recruiting little, you know, players from small towns we'd never heard of, and just beating the socks off everybody, and then MK started doing it.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Got all the respect in the world for both of those men.
Oh yeah. I just remember Johnny Fred McGill from Taylorsville. I call him Johnny Fred, but I saw him in high school. I think they played Hattiesburg, and he was quite a player. But anyway,
Oh, he's a great player.
Yeah, and I remember I remember I think it was really the first time a SWAC school played a Mississippi, well, State or Ole Miss, I think. In basketball, Alcorn went up and beat State in the NIT, and State had a pretty good team that year. That was probably in the late 70s.
State had a great team. They were, as a matter of fact, I covered that team. But Alcorn had a better team. I mean, if Whitney was around today, I bet you, Dale, the most he ever made, I don't think he ever made $100,000 in a season for sure. But if he was around now, he'd be making $3 or $4 million a year somewhere, or maybe more.
Well,
because he was that good a coach.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think it was around 77 or 8, Ole Miss hired a guy named Steve Sloan to be their head football coach. And I came across it about a year ago in a paper, and I had to look at it about 2 or 3 times. It said that Steve Sloan had signed a 4-year contract worth $28,000 a year to be the head football coach at Ole Miss. And I'm thinking, $28,000, man! I don't say I was making that, but
yeah, the most that Johnny Vaught ever made was $27,500 a year, and that was for head coach and athletic director for some of the time.
Oh my goodness! And,
yeah, I mean, he won 6 SEC titles.
Yeah, I remember they had a quote on him after Archie got drafted by the Saints. Back then the draft wasn't that, I guess, publicized as it is now. So anyway, so Vaught was going to help Archie, I guess. I don't know. I know Archie had a yeah. But anyway, they started talking to the Saints, and the Saints were going to offer him, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000. I don't know what it was, over so many years. And Vaught said, "My God, he'd be taking a cut and pay to go down there."
Yeah, he ain't taking a pay cut to go to New Orleans. That's what yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
so
it was different time, but at the time, Archie signed the biggest rookie contract there had ever been in the NFL.
Yeah.
And it was Frank Crossway, a lawyer in Indianola, Mississippi, that negotiated for Archie.
Yeah, that was. I look back on those times. They were very, very exciting in Mississippi, especially with all the Archie Mania going on at that time.
Even in the '60s, Archie was getting $100 handshakes. Where after a game, he'd be walking out of the locker room, and people shake hands with him, and they had a $100 bill in their hands.
Yeah,
he was worth it.
Oh yeah. He was quite a player. I just hate his NFL career. I know he had some good moments, but I just wish he could have maybe got with a franchise that was more structured for him during that time. I remember Vaught said when I read a book Vaught was talking about Archie, and Vaught said about Archie, and we'll get off Archie here in a minute, but he said that in the future you're going to have a quarterback that can run the ball, but you're also going to have a quarterback that can pass the ball on the run. And it's almost come to NFL has taken Coach Vaught's philosophy now 50 years later, and it just seems like even in the NFL now, Archie would almost thrive in NFL these days compared to what he did, because back in New Orleans he didn't have set running plays. He most likely was running for his life, which was a little bit different.
He was running for his life.
Yeah, and all that stuff.
But before we get away from Archie, can you imagine if every pro athlete did what Archie and his sons have done, and did so much for kids and did so much for communities? And I was down there Super Bowl week when they named the Children's Hospital in New Orleans after Archie. and after the Manning family, and that now makes 4 hospitals around the United States that are named after Mannings because of all the money they've given and raised, and they're all children's hospitals. I just think it's so special.
Oh, most definitely, and they've been so blessed, and but they've blessed others with their blessings, and that's the greatest gift that you can give somebody in today's world and everything. Well, listen, you and I have talked before when we've seen each other and for different things, but Mississippi's really been blessed with some great athletes. Who was the most interesting athlete that you may have interviewed from our state or from anywhere?
Oh, there's been so many of them, but God, it'd be hard to say the most. I've been blessed to cover the greatest receiver in football history. In my mind, the greatest running back in football history. Several of the greatest quarterbacks. It'd be hard to come up with the best. I don't know. The most interesting, Jerry Rice wasn't even. He wasn't even recruited. He had a choice of going to Mississippi Valley or Jackson State. Alcorn didn't even recruit him, and yet then he comes to be the greatest receiver. Brett down at Southern Miss, he wasn't recruited. He didn't have a Division I scholarship the day before signing day until somebody that Southern had committed decided to go to Alabama instead, and Southern reluctantly took Brett Favre, who goes on to win 3 MVPs in the NFL. Those are the kind of stories I like the best. Hell, Archie didn't. He had scholarship offers from Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Tulane, and that was it. Wasn't that highly recruited. Seems like all the greatest ones were ones that kind of went under the radar coming out of high school.
Guys, I hate to do this. I don't say much except when we run out of time, and I'm afraid we're at that point for tonight. Rick, man, we sure appreciate you and taking time to be with us and what you.
Sure.
When you speak, Mississippi listens, brother, and we thank you for being with us. We're going to ask you to hold on just a minute. Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back after the break with tonight's final segment of the Brouhaha. See you in a minute.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Good evening. Welcome back to tonight's final segment. I tell you what, that's a Mississippi legend right there.
He is.
He cuts a mighty big.
Well, he gave me an opportunity when I was in school down at Southern to be what they call a correspondent or a stringer. They called them stringers back in those days. He'd cut me up on Friday, and he'd say, "Hey, can you go to so and so place, Richton, and so somebody was going to play,
Yeah.
Or can you go out to Oak Grove?" He said he never went.
Yeah.
Well, I went.
Yeah, you went.
I saw.
Dale will go. Let's send Dale.
Well, I mean, he was paying us good.
Yeah.
I mean, minimum wage was like 65, 75 cents at the time. I was making $3, man. Three bucks a game, man.
That was the glory days, wasn't
Yeah,
it? When men were men.
Yeah.
Man.
Of course, back then, I don't know if you know it or not, but games would start at 7:30, and I'm serious. By 9 or 9:15, we'd be leaving the parking lot. Already interviewed the coaches.
Gone. Man.
Because nobody passed. They just ran the ball, and the clock ran, that was it. It was over with.
Yeah.
Let's get on and get out of here. You'd see 2 or 3 passes a game,
Dale, I tell you what, I hate to say it, but we're about out of time.
We are?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we just got started there.
I know. Time flies when we're having fun, but we had great having him with us tonight. We appreciate that. I want to remind everybody that you can follow us during the week on our Facebook page at the Brouhaha, and all these shows, including tonight's will be cataloged for you on our, let's see, what is that, YouTube channel at the Brouhaha. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Del McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.